My name is Melanie Jenkins, and I'm 33 years old. I live in a quiet, leafy suburb of Asheville, North Carolina. Every morning I come out of my rented townhouse, where the walls are too thin and the windows are slightly askew from age, with a cup of coffee and a thermos and a folder with reports under my arm. I get behind the wheel of my old Toyota Camry, which has long ceased to be the object of envy in the parking lot of my office, and drive to the center, where there is a glass office with the Thomson logo and Pierce Financial Group. I'm a financial consultant, one of the best in our department, and I'm proud of it, even though I know they call me Ice Chalk on the sidelines. I'm not holding a grudge. I'm used to these labels. And before we continue, write in the comments from which city you are watching this video. Enjoy watching. My colleagues respect me, but they don't invite me to lunch. They're laughing at the coffee machine, discussing TV shows I'm not interested in, and planning trips together where I'm never invited. Perhaps because I don't complain about being tired, I'm not late, and I don't ask for favors. I work overtime, take weekend shifts, and volunteer for the most difficult clients. They think I live for numbers. One day, Leslie from the marketing department muttered as she passed by, "Here we go again. The robot has turned on," when I arrived at the office at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning. She doesn't know that every hour I spend in this office brings me closer to my goal. My goal is a house. Not for myself. For my parents. They live in an old trailer in Gastonia, an hour away from here. This house was once new when I was 6. I remember the smell of vinyl walls, the slight creaking of floors, and how my father, still full of energy at the time, said that all this is temporary. The temporary, as it often happens, has become permanent. The trailer is falling apart now. The paint is peeling, the windows fog up even in summer, and the faucet in the bathroom drips so much that it drives you crazy when you try to fall asleep. When I come to visit, I always notice how Dad is once again fixing the roof or hammering nails in the sagging porch. Mom makes soup as if everything is fine, and I sit on the cracked couch and quietly count how much I still need to save up for the down payment. "Melanie, how's work going?" Dad asks at lunch, when we all get together on Sunday. His voice is always cheerful, but there is a weariness in his eyes that cannot be hidden. "It's okay. I got a new project, a big client," I reply, cutting off a piece of casserole. "Wow," he says, nodding, but the next second he turns to my brother. "Jake, what's your idea of a campus tour? Something new?" And Jake, as always, perks up. He begins to talk about how his friend Trevor found an investor, and how they are going to assemble a mobile recording studio. His arms are waving, his voice sounds passionate, and his parents look at him with such pride that my chest tightens. "I think we can offer a subscription service with exclusive tracks," he says, and Mom nods admiringly. "That's brilliant, Jake. A real business idea." I'm silent. I look at the fork and stir the salad. A few weeks ago, I got a raise and a substantial raise in salary, but I didn't tell you about it. I don't see the point. The last time I shared my success, my mom just said, "Well done, honey," and immediately switched to Jake's new venture, a podcast about music and culture. "You're always so serious, Mel," he grins, noticing my silence. "Work is not everything in life, you know." He says it like a man who has never paid any bills on time, and his parents laugh. "Jake's right," Mom interjects. "You also need to live. It's not all about saving for retirement." I lower my eyes. How do I explain to them that I'm not doing this for myself? That my life is built on savings, no vacations, no trips to the movies, coffee from a thermos, clothes from sales, expired food coupons. That every time I want to buy myself something beautiful, I remember my dad saying that mold had appeared in the bedroom again, and my mom complained that the tiles in the bathroom were coming off. My colleagues laugh when I bring lunch from home in a plastic container. They joke that I eat like a student. I'm smiling and not saying that instant noodles and oatmeal are a means to get closer to the goal, not a reason for ridicule. Every time I transfer money from my salary, I see my fund growing, an account that I just called home. I recently watched a video on the website. Bright, cozy, with a veranda and a garden. It had a spacious kitchen where mom could cook, and a room with large windows for dad to read in the morning. I saved it to my favorites, but the price is still beyond the budget. I'm not giving up. Next summer, if there are no force majeure events, I will be able to afford this option. Maybe even a little earlier if I get another bonus. My whole life consists of graphs and tables, not only in the office, but also in the shower. I calculate everything: how much I need to save per month in order to collect taxes for the year, how much interest will be spent on insurance, how much will be left for furniture. I plan like a military strategist. Unlike Jake, I don't allow myself to lose. Because if I lose, my parents will stay in that old house with a nail sticking out of the wall, on which I once hung my childhood photo. Sometimes in the evenings I lie down on the couch, close my eyes and imagine how one day I will bring them to a new home. I'll say, "This is for you. I wanted you to live a better life." I can imagine their expressions, their tears, their hugs. I live by this picture. She gives me strength in moments when it seems that I am alone on this road. My colleagues can call me whatever they want. Let me be Ice Chalk. Don't let them understand why I don't join their parties. They don't know that I have a reason. And this reason is stronger than any idle laughter in a smoking room or cheap wine on a Friday night. My name is Melanie Jenkins. I'm working to build a house. A house that my parents can enter with a light heart. And no one, absolutely no one, will make me turn away from this path. When I first saw it, the house on the corner of Maple Lane and Fernridge Road, my heart stopped, as if it had found the rhythm it had been searching for all my life. The Biltmore Forest was the place I imagined in the stillness of the night: old oak trees, quiet streets where even the wind whispers softly, and the lawns are trimmed to a single line. There are no sirens in the area, no peeling paint on the facades, and every window reflects peace. And here it is, an old but well-maintained house with white shutters and a wide porch, as if it came off a postcard. I got out of the car, walked slowly up the path framed by rosemary bushes, and smelled the scent of summer. That's when I realized it was him. "How's it going, Mel?" Carol, my old friend and realtor, asked as I stood frozen in front of the front door. "He looks like you." "I want him," I gasped, almost unable to believe I was saying it out loud. Not even for myself. I can already see my mother on this veranda with a cup of tea. And Dad will definitely love the backyard. It's small, but well maintained. Carol nodded, and her eyes softened. He expects exactly such tenants. Come on, I'll show you inside. The house was filled with comfort. The wooden floors creaked, but not plaintively, but as if in time with breathing. The kitchen was gleaming white, and it had a deep porcelain sink, which was exactly what Mom had always wanted, but she had been putting off replacing it for years. The living room with a fireplace and a large window looked out onto the street, where the sun gently fell on the brick path. There are 3 bedrooms on the second floor. I immediately imagined how one of them would become a guest room, and the other, a place where my mother would read books, sitting in an armchair by the window. Everything seemed incredibly real. "It's a little over your budget," Carol said cautiously when we returned to the street. "But with your credit history and down payment, it's quite realistic." I nodded. I was ready. In 2 years, I've given up everything: movies, vacations, new things, even coffee at my favorite coffee shop. All for this moment. Let's make an offer. I don't want to miss it. As the weeks of paperwork, assessments, insurance, and endless signatures went by, I lived on the edge. Every morning, sitting in the office chair, I checked my mail, catching the excitement in my chest. But in those weeks when everything was up in the air, the usual drama continued at home. Jake, my brother, was full of new ideas as always. Now he has decided to open a mobile recording studio. The van, equipped as a mini studio, was supposed to travel to colleges and record aspiring musicians. He even made a PowerPoint presentation and showed it to Mom and Dad. I arrived for Sunday dinner and found everyone in the living room, where Jake was enthusiastically flipping through slides on his father's old laptop. "We just need some seed money," he said, beaming. $50,000, maybe a little more. "But believe me, this is an investment in the future." "That's really impressive, Jake," Mom said, clapping her hands. "Such a creative approach. It will be a real breakthrough. We just need someone who believes in us," he added, glancing at me. "Someone who has a stable job and some savings." I could feel the words rising in my throat like a tide. It was already boiling inside. "Do you really think I'm going to give you money again?" I asked, trying not to raise my voice. "How many times have we been through this? Handmade jewelry. A production company. Music blog. All your projects burned out faster than a candle in the wind." Mom frowned, as if I had disappointed her. "Melanie, don't be so harsh. Jake is trying. He was just unlucky. You need to believe in family." I looked at her in disbelief. "Have you ever believed in me? When I was paying your bills, fixing the heating, helping Jake with his endeavors, did you believe in me then?" Dad cleared his throat, avoiding my gaze. "We know you've done a lot, honey. But you're doing well. And Jake needs a chance." I got up from the table. It became difficult for me to breathe. I felt the walls pressing down, as if the room was narrowing. I don't have to be his bank. I don't have to save him from his own decisions. I'm done. I left, leaving dinner almost untouched. I turned on the radio in the car, but I couldn't hear anything. Everything inside was buzzing like after a blow. I couldn't believe that I was back in the role of a reliable person who had to give, sacrifice, and give in. A few days later, I received a call from Carol. "Congratulations, Mel. The sellers accepted your offer. The house is yours." I sat at my workplace, staring at the monitor, and slowly realized the meaning of the words. He is mine. I bought a house. And not just a building, I bought a thank you. Comfort. Proof. In the evening I went to the house. No longer just dreaming, but as an owner. I walked through the rooms, touching the walls. Everything will be exactly as I planned. The colors of the walls are light olive for the kitchen, bluish for Mom's bedroom. I found a fabric for curtains that she would definitely like. I even ordered a high-backed chair for Dad. Every touch was thought out. I decided to save the surprise until the housewarming day. I'll invite everyone, parents, Jake, friends, colleagues. Everything will be like in the movies. I'll raise a toast, make a speech, get out the documents and say, "This house is yours now." I could already imagine Dad wiping away a tear, and Mom squeezing my hand. I wanted them to feel what I've been feeling for years. I see you, I'm grateful, and you deserve more. I didn't tell them. I wanted it to be unexpected. Let everything else be left behind. Let Jake and his dreams be the backdrop. I chose my path. And finally, I walked through it with full confidence, step by step, towards my dream home. Sunday turned out to be especially clear. The sky had been washed out by the recent rain, and the sun was lazily making its way through the treetops, casting delicate, almost transparent shadows on the asphalt. I drove to Gastonia, as always, with a tight lump in my throat and a carefully controlled expression on my face, not too happy so as not to arouse suspicion, and not too tense so as not to provoke unnecessary questions. There was a bottle of good California Pinot Noir in the trunk, wrapped in a thin napkin with a golden ribbon. My gesture of reconciliation. An attempt to rebalance the precarious balance between me and the others. Dinner was supposed to be the starting point of a new chapter, because I was ready for a great revelation, for a surprise that would finally explain everything. Everything I did, why I was silent, why I refused to help. I drove into a familiar courtyard, where every tree seemed a little lower than I remembered it, and the house, on the contrary, sank a little more. The old trailer, the sagging awning over the porch, the peeling paint, everything spoke of a time that spares no one. Only the metal weather vane on the roof, the same rooster that my father had once installed with his own hands, was still spinning cheerfully. I got out of the car, turning to the back seat as if saying goodbye to a mystery for the last time. Mom opened the door before I could knock, as if she was on duty behind the curtain. Her smile was strained. "Hi, honey," she said, and her gaze slid past me, lingering somewhere behind where there was nothing. "You're early." "I wanted to help a little," I replied, picking up the bottle. "I brought wine. Dad likes red, remember?" Mom nodded, but didn't take it. She just stepped inside, leaving the door open, and I went in without waiting for an invitation. Jake was sitting on the couch with his legs apart, in his usual pose of a confident dreamer. His hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and there was a laptop on his lap. Next to it is a stack of papers, a notebook with graphs and calculations. "Well, hello, little sister," he said, without even looking up. "I have a lot to do," I said calmly, sitting down on the corner of the sofa. "But I'm here today." Dad came out of the kitchen with a towel over his shoulder and a kind of tired but peaceful expression on his face. He nodded, sat down next to Jake, and we stood in that strange, almost ritualistic silence that always preceded Sunday dinner. Only the sound of a pot of boiling vegetables disturbed the shaky calm. When we sat down at the table, and the first toast was said, to health, as always, I knew, now. It's now or never. "I have some news," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I bought a house. In the Biltmore Forest. 3 bedrooms, garden, quiet street. There will be a housewarming party in 2 weeks. I want to invite all of you." Mom looked up from her plate. She wasn't surprised. No, rather, she was wary. There was something like doubt in her gaze. "Bought a house?" she asked, as if she hadn't heard. "For yourself?" I hesitated for a split second, but quickly nodded. "It's just a house for now. You'll see for yourself." Jake put down his fork. His jaw tightened and his eyes narrowed. "You knew," he said softly, but with emphasis. "You knew about my project. You knew that I was looking for an investor. And you bought the house anyway." I looked at him, amazed. "Jake, you can't seriously think that I have." He interrupted. "No, of course not. But I thought family wasn't about debt. It's about support. About faith. I've shown you everything, calculations, ideas, presentations. I opened up to you, and you went and spent the money on yourself." "At yourself?" I repeated, feeling a storm building in me. "How many times have I given you money? How many times have I funded your startups, Jake? And what came of it? You know the answer." He got up from the table. "So now I'm a failure? A mistake? Ballast?" "I didn't say that," I whispered. Dad raised his hand as if asking for silence, but said nothing. Mom sighed and looked at me as if I had just hit someone. "Melanie," she began softly, "maybe you're really overreacting to this." Jake tried. He's still trying. "And you've got everything set up. You could help. You're always so reasonable. Isn't that what family is all about?" I felt the cold seeping into me, spreading down my spine. Their words were like ice, enveloping what I had been harboring for so long, hope. "I heard you," I said softly, getting up. "Thanks for dinner." Are you leaving? Dad asked, surprised. Yes. I don't think I'm hungry. I stepped out into the dark evening, and the door slammed shut behind me with a soft click. I sat in the car for a long time, looking at my reflection in the black screen of the navigator. She didn't cry. I just felt the crack inside getting a little wider. Later, at home, I received a message from Jake. He wrote at length, with emotions, with reproaches and anger. If you had invested, the family could be proud of the success. We could create something real together. But you chose yourself again. I didn't answer. Instead, I put on a work shirt, took out a roller and paint, and went into the bedroom. Today, the cue was behind the very wall on which I planned to hang photos of Mom and Dad, their youthful pictures, where they are young, happy, standing against the background of some lake in the glow of sunset. I painted it evenly, methodically, as if I were covering up the pain that wouldn't let go. The new color lay thickly, hiding the old, as I tried to hide disappointment under hope. I didn't give up. I didn't back down. I still believed that when they entered this house, they would see everything that I had done, for them, then everything would fall into place. A surprise will fix everything. I just have to finish what I started. The morning started with a ray of sunlight piercing the living room curtain like an arrow from a children's fairy tale, and I woke up with a feeling of something real. The day of the party. The day I've been heading towards for years, not weeks. It's like the final scene of a movie, the script for which I wrote in my mind during long evenings in the kitchen, between 2 sips of cheap coffee and expired food coupons. I was here now, in this house that smelled of fresh paint and mint, ever since I put Sasha in the drawers. I walked barefoot on the wooden floor, listening to each board creak under my feet, as if greeting me. Everything was ready: balloons, milky tablecloths, elegant glasses, neatly arranged on the sideboard. Tables rented from a company on the next street were under a canopy in the courtyard, and a playlist of light, bubbling jazz was already playing from my laptop connected to the speakers. I looked around. The photos of my parents, the one where Mom in a white sundress hugs Dad by the lake, and the one where the three of us with Jake at the Christmas matinee, were already framed on the wall. I hummed them up the day before, with a tremor in my fingers and a strange flutter in my chest. It was a statement, a gesture, a memory, and a hope at the same time. This house was ready, not just physically, but also internally. He breathed warmth. I filled a glass with champagne, inhaled the scent of summer, and for a moment it seemed to me that everything finally fell into place. The first guests arrived earlier than I expected. Sophie, my colleague from the planning department, came with her husband and brought a blueberry pie. Behind her is Mark from financial analysis, always restrained, but today with a wide smile and a bouquet of yellow tulips. Then there are the neighbors from my old house, Brian and Sharon, an elderly couple who used to bring me homemade cakes when I was sick. Then there was Cousin Ellie with her husband and 2 noisy boys, and even Professor Drake from the university, my economics teacher, who still remembered my term paper on microfinance in East Africa. "Melanie, this is unbelievable," he said, looking around the living room. "You have the taste of a designer. Everything is so harmonious." "Thank you, Professor," I replied, trying not to break into a wide, childish smile. "It's all thanks to long thought and a modest budget." "Yes, but you put your heart into it. It shows." The guests wandered around the house, admiring the built-in shelves, the light from the windows, and the kitchen with a porcelain sink. Everyone was talking about how cozy it was here, how the character felt. I smiled, accepted congratulations, poured wine, raised glasses. I looked for my mom. Dad. Jake. Every time the door rang, my heart skipped a beat. But all new acquaintances came in, and none from the family. At some point, I was left alone on the veranda, to the sounds of laughter and hubbub coming from behind the house. He holds a half-empty glass in his hand. There is a sunbeam in the palm of your hand. And at that moment, suddenly, With the clarity that comes only after a lot of tossing, I realized they won't come. Not Mom. Not Dad. Not Jake. No text, no call, no apologies. Nothing. It's like I didn't invite you. As if all this is nothing more than a celebration of one woman who has decided that her efforts are meaningful. I expected to feel pain. Or rage. Or maybe the devastation. But instead, I felt it, rest. It was as if something had leveled up inside. It's like I've finally stopped waiting for approval, stopped being obligated. All this is not to earn love. All this is in order to finally live. I returned to the house, clapped my hands, attracted attention, and, raising my glass, said, "Thank you to everyone who came today. This house has become a reality thanks to many years of work, and I am immensely happy to see you here. But I want to say something important. Initially, I didn't buy this house for myself. I wanted to give a gift to my parents. I kept quiet about it, hoping to surprise them, to show them everything today, at the party. I dreamed of seeing their faces when they realized that this was their home now. But they didn't come. They didn't answer. And now I realize that maybe this house should stay mine. Because I also deserve a place where I am appreciated. Where they love me not for what I give, but for who I am." There was silence. Warm, not painful. Then one of the neighbors slowly applauded, then another, and a third, and then the clapping filled the room like light rain. I stood holding my glass high, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was being applauded not for my success, not for my merits, but simply for who I am. Later, when evening fell on the Biltmore forest and the guests began to say goodbye, I went out on the porch to see the last ones off. The lanterns in the courtyard shone softly, and music came from the windows. Someone shouted goodbye, "Beautiful house, Melanie." I nodded in response, feeling fatigue fill my whole body, but not pressing, but, on the contrary, caressing, like a sea wave off the shore. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Message. I pulled it out, and my heart barely trembled. "Melanie, we're coming tomorrow. We need to discuss everything." Mom. I stared at the screen for a long time. At first, without emotion. Then with a quiet smile. Tomorrow. To discuss. All. Those words were too late, too careful. They did not come from the heart, but from necessity. Still, I didn't feel angry. I just turned off my phone, put it on the table and went into the bedroom. The room smelled of freshness and a new beginning. I lay down in bed with my arms outstretched, and for the first time in years, I didn't expect anything from the morning. The morning was light as a breath. I woke up to the rustle of leaves outside the window, to the soft rays of the sun refracting through the curtains, and for a few seconds I forgot that the day had just begun. It seemed as if everything that was going to happen had already happened, and now there was only peace and quiet ahead. I went into the kitchen barefoot, humming to myself a melody from my childhood, either a lullaby or a TV commercial that my mother used to repeat often. The coffee maker bubbled peacefully, filling the air with the fragrance that I've always associated with tranquility. I poured a cup, sat by the window and watched the street wake up. The janitors had already walked down the path, and the neighbor across the street was walking her old golden retriever, lazily wandering nearby. The world lived without knowing that the past, wrapped in suitcases and unspoken words, was about to appear on my doorstep. I heard them before I saw them, the slam of a car door, muffled footsteps on the gravel, the slight squeak of suitcase wheels on the tiled path. I stood up, took a breath, and went to the door. My heart was beating steadily, but there was that subtle heaviness in my chest with which things happen in life that I can't turn away from. When I opened the door, I saw them standing in the morning light, like shadows from another time. Mom was wearing her blue cardigan, which she only wore on special occasions, and Dad was holding a large box wrapped with duct tape. There was uncertainty on their faces, which was quickly replaced by something firmer. Mom smiled. "Good morning, Melanie," she said, as if we'd just parted in the kitchen. "We decided that it would be better this way. We discussed everything and realized that you were right. It's really time for us to move. It's so cozy here." Dad nodded, as if confirming his decision. He looked tired, but for some reason pleased, like a man who had fulfilled his part of the agreement and was now waiting to be allowed into the house. I stood motionless, leaning on the door frame. My shadow fell right on the porch like a barrier. "This is my home now," I said calmly. "I bought it with love. But not as a duty. And not as a duty. I wanted to give you something that shows how important you are to me. But you didn't come." "Melanie," Mom spoke again, a little louder. "We were upset. They're excited. It's all with Jake, with his project, it's all piled up. But now we understand, and everything is settled. You made a gesture, and we accepted it. Let's not complicate things." "It's not a gesture," I interrupted. "It was my life. My years. My efforts. And my moment. But you made a choice not to come." Dad frowned, but didn't say anything. Mom folded her arms across her chest, her face tense. "You have to," she said, in a voice that had a hint of metal in it for the first time. "We're your parents. We gave you everything we could. We raised you. And now you can't just close the door in front of us." "I don't owe you anything," I replied, feeling something inside me fall into place. "I did it out of love. Not out of debt. And I'm tired of being the one who always puts herself off for later." Dad set the box aside, as if it had suddenly become too heavy. "But you promised," he said. "Don't you? You said you wanted us to be better off. That it's for us." "I didn't make any promises," I said softly. "Neither in writing, nor verbally. I was hoping. I've been dreaming. But you didn't want to be a part of that dream." Mom stepped closer, her eyes flashing. "Is this all because of Jake?" "What is it?" she asked. "Are you still jealous?" "He's just a dreamer. He believes in people. And you? You're a performer. You're gray, safe. I always have been." Those words cut like a rusty knife, but not from pain, from a sudden realization. Everything that I had suspected for years was now said out loud, without embellishment. I wasn't loved. I was comfortable. A comfortable daughter who keeps quiet, pays, and never argues. "Yes, I'm a performer," I said, slowly straightening up. "I'm the one who holds things on my shoulders that you don't even notice. Who pays off debts, repairs roofs, sends Jake to sound engineering courses, which he drops out in 2 weeks. I'm boring, right? But I'm real. I'm going through with it. And he is the eternal junior star. And you will always choose it. It doesn't matter how many times he lets you down." They were silent. Mom turned away, pursing her lips. Dad stood with his shoulders hunched, as if he suddenly realized that he had come to the wrong place. "I'm asking you to leave," I finally said. "This house is mine. So is my life. And I'm not going to fight for a place you never wanted to give me anymore." Mom wanted to say something, but I was already closing the door. Dad took the suitcase without saying a word. The box remained standing on the threshold. When the door closed, I leaned against it and took a deep breath. The silence inside was palpable. There was no room for other people's expectations in this house. Just for the truth. Just for me. 2 months have passed. Time, as always, dissolved into everyday life, but now it did not slip through my fingers, but gently flowed nearby, allowing me to finally feel that I was living in the present. Not in the future, which you build all the time, not in the past, which you review at night, and not in other people's expectations, but here, in this kitchen with white facades and a wooden table, at which it is so good to drink morning coffee. Here, where my flowers are reaching out to the light on the windowsill, and my neighbor's cat is lazily crawling around the backyard, as if she feels that this place is a safe haven. The house became mine not only on paper. I felt it in every detail. In the shelves that I filled with books that smelled of dust and adventure. In a blanket lying on the armrest of the sofa, in which it is cozy to wrap up on cool evenings. In the smell of tomatoes that ripened in the garden under the windows, and lavender, scattering purple stars at the gate. I planted them myself, at dawn, in silence, with dirty palms and a pure heart. Sometimes I get fragmentary news from friends or distant relatives. That's how I found out that my parents took out a big loan secured by a trailer. The money, as it turned out, went to launch Jake's studio. The mobile project, as he called it. A music van filled with equipment and slogans about creative freedom. At first, he was even invited to local colleges. He recorded a couple of podcasts, conducted a master class. But after a couple of weeks, it became clear that the scheme was not working. The equipment breaks down, there are no orders, and renting parking consumes the budget. The van was abandoned in the parking lot behind the supermarket, peeling off like a dream that had been forgotten to hide from the rain in time. I wasn't surprised. I didn't even feel any malice. There was only a strange, detached relief. It was as if the puzzle that I had been trying to put together in my head for so long had finally found its integrity, and I saw the whole picture. And there was no place for me in this picture. There, in their world, I was a guest, not a heroine. But it didn't matter anymore. Now, on weekends, I brew coffee in a large ceramic mug, sit on the porch and read. The neighbors come in to say hello. Sharon brings a cherry pie, and Brian offers to help fix the mailbox. We exchange recipes, laugh, talk about the weather. These are simple things, and they are real. I walk around the neighborhood in the morning, discovering new routes, spice shops, antique shops. For the first time in many years, I feel that everything is not passing by, but touching me, breathing next to me, weaving into my fabric. And then there's Charlie. An architect who lives 2 blocks away, with a perpetually unshaven chin, a shy smile, and kind eyes. We met by chance. He helped me bring home a bag of soil for the garden beds. Then we talked about trees, then about literature, then about the meaning of solitude. He offered to look at my attic, help with the insulation. And since then, he's been coming sometimes, infrequently, but always on time. We don't talk loudly, we don't make plans. We're just there, close by. And this is also the first time it feels like peace. One evening, when the sky turned a deep blue and the lanterns in the courtyard cast soft golden circles on the sidewalk, the doorbell rang. I knew who it was. She took the glasses, pulled her hair into a ponytail, straightened her shoulders and opened it. Charlie stood with a pizza box and a bottle of wine, smiling a little. "I hope you haven't had dinner," he said. "I have an argument with cheese and basil." "There's always room for pizza in this house," I replied, and stepped aside to let him in. He went to the veranda, spread out the box, poured the wine, and we sat down side by side, not hurrying, not filling the silence with empty words. He looked at me, and there was something very simple in his gaze, not expectation, not admiration, but respect. I looked at him and thought, how quiet and right it can be in your heart when you don't prove anything to anyone, when you're just sitting in your house with someone who doesn't ask to be someone else. "You know," I said, looking up at the stars, "I've been thinking for a long time that I have to earn love. That it can be earned like a bonus at work or a good grade at school. I did, I built, I proved. And then I realized that you only need to deserve one love, for yourself. Everything else comes when you stop standing on your toes." He nodded without interrupting and took my hand. There were more confessions in that simplicity than there were thousands of confessions. This is my home now. My life. My morning is with coffee and fresh air. My tomatoes, lavender bushes, and a book on my lap. My walls, which are inhabited not by the burden of duty, but by the ease of choice. I am no longer a child waiting for praise. I am a woman who has finally put an end to an endless sentence written in someone else's words. And even if not everything was right in the past, let there be holes that can no longer be sewn up. But I've learned to breathe. Without fear. Without shame. Unnecessarily deserving. When Charlie smiles at me from across the table, I smile back. Because now is my time. And I choose to live. That's the only way.